It's Kay. Welcome back. So, today we're actually going to be switching it up. Instead of talking about a book, like a long form story, we're going to be discussing a short story that I actually read in a class for my senior year of college. And I really liked it. I liked the commentary that it was making on the world. And so I decided that I'm going to discuss my thoughts on it here on this channel. I know I don't normally do short story content, but I'm a reader and I read a short story, so now I'm going to talk about it. We are going to be talking about The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas by Ursula K. Le Guin? Yes. So this short story is actually really interesting. So first I'm going to summarize the plot of the short story with you, and then I'm going to discuss what I think it's saying about the world, and then just like other little thoughts that I have about it after that. So first, this story is about a utopia, essentially. It asks you to envision the perfect city where everyone is happy, there is no suffering, there is no pain. And they do this in such a way where they acknowledge that with the way that the world works, if someone were to never feel any negatives, they wouldn't feel positives. But they disregard that. They say, nope, that's not a thing in this city. Everyone is genuinely happy and they feel positively and things are good for them all of the time, and they know that and they appreciate it and they love it. And so right away it's sort of asking you to suspend your level of disbelief, which is a bit of a struggle, but it gives you examples of this summer festival, the first day of summer that there is happening in the story, and so everyone being very happy and excited and positive, and everything going like perfectly. There's a drug, but it's not addictive. If someone wants to take it, they can take it. But there's not really needs for drugs because nobody's suffering, that sort of thing. It's supposed to be this perfect utopia where everyone is living the best life. And so right away, you're like, what's going on here? Right? So after it spends about a page and a half to 2 pages talking about how amazing life is for these citizens of this city, it then proceeds to go into, so you can't imagine this? Well, let me add one more thing. That one thing is that somewhere in a cellar in this city, there is a child who is locked up and being neglected and not like abused physically, but abused in every other sense of the word. And so they're only given grease and cornmeal once a day with a cup of water. They aren't ever like shown affection. They have a bucket in the cellar that they use to go to the bathroom. It's bare bones levels of neglect and abuse that this child has to endure. And everyone in the city of Omelas knows that this child exists. They all learn about this child in about probably middle school, it says. And some of them will go and visit the child. Some people never visit the child. Some people will visit the child again. But everyone knows that this child exists, and they can choose to visit this child or they don't have to. But if they want to continue to have all of these positive interactions in their life and live in this utopia, then this child has to continue to stay in this cellar. And like the direct suffering and misery of this child is what allows them to have such a great life. And so everyone in this city just accepts it as fact. And then over time, as they get older and like grow accustomed to it, to sort of like adapt to the fact that they're just allowing somebody to be abused, they will, what's the word I'm looking for? They make excuses, is what essentially the story says. And those excuses are that, well, this child wouldn't even know kindness if it was shown to them now. They've suffered for too long. Even if we brought this child out into the sun and gave it food, like, they wouldn't be happy because that's all it knows. All it knows is the darkness and sitting in its own bodily fluids and being treated poorly and being given barely any food. And so they convince themselves that this is acceptable because the child doesn't know any better, which is terrible. So the closing of this story ends with a paragraph about how sometimes after seeing the child that has to suffer for everyone else, a child in the middle of the night will leave their house, or they won't go home from visiting the child. They just don't go home. Or an adult will go quiet for a few days, is how it's described. And then in the middle of the night, they'll just walk away. And these people that don't go home or that go silent and then walk away, they all leave. They walk through all of omelas and walk right out of the borders, and they don't come back. And they say that they're not sure where these people who leave omelas go, but that the people that walk away from omelas always know where they're going. And that's how the story ends. So, now that we've discussed plot, let's talk about what this story is saying. Because everybody reading this story can say, this is terrible, this is horrible. Who would ever be okay with living a positive, happy life as a result of the direct suffering of a child? Like, that's a terrible thing to do, to say anything. If you believe that that's an okay thing, it's horrible. Everyone says that, right? Well, if you live in the 21st century, not really, right? That's what everything is right now. If you're doing good, you're doing it at the expense of somebody else, of something else, right? Like, really simple example, fast fashion. It's cheap, it's cute, it's I already said cheap, so affordable is not a good option, but you know what I mean. It's cheap, it's affordable, it's convenient, it's nice. It doesn't necessarily last long, but it lasts long enough for the trends, and then you throw it away. It's fast fashion. That's what you do with it, right? Well, who makes fast fashion? Most of that's being made in sweatshops or by children, and it's point blank exploitation, and we benefit from that, right? We benefit from that. So what this story is saying is it's making comments on the fact that society benefits from other people's suffering constantly. And yes, there are people that walk away, people that ban fast fashion, that do not acknowledge it, will not buy those clothes. They're doing it. They're walking away from a meal list. They're like, I'm not going to stand for this suffering. I can't change it, but I cannot be a part of it. And so it's just interesting to read this short story and have it be like so targeted to first world countries. For the class that I read it for college, we were looking at class inequality. We were looking at class and race inequality in the United States. And so it was focusing more on like how the rich benefit from the suffering of the poor, and the poor trying not to suffer, and how that's really like a similar relationship. And I don't know of any rich that walk away from being rich, but I'm sure there's an example out there. And so we talked about class inequality, and then we talked about race inequality, and plenty of people acknowledge that and try to fight against that and are walking away. And that's amazing and it's fantastic, but this is just giving a commentary on the fact that there are plenty of people that don't, and that just accept that that's what it is, and that they want that, like, oh, well, they wouldn't know what to do if they weren't suffering. And so it's just a very interesting commentary. I would love to hear your thoughts on what you think about the ones who walk away from omelas. You should drop a comment down below what you think about it, what you think its commentary is, how you think it's applicable to real life. That would be really cool to see. I want to get the conversation rolling on this one. If you like what this story is saying, give this video a like. That'd be great. But anyways, back to what I was saying. Let's discuss other little thoughts that I have about it. I think that it was really interesting and powerful of the author of this to include the paragraph about the people that do walk away, because that very easily could have been left off, and I don't think that it would have hit quite as hard that this is something that is I mean, everyone knows that it's wrong, but if it's a society where nobody acknowledges that it's wrong, then it would seem less important. But because of the fact that they included that there are people that walk away, there are children that walk away that are like, this isn't okay, I'm not going to accept this, and they just leave. Like, they're like, I'm not going to be a part of this system. And that is so powerful, and I really appreciated that little piece that was added in there. Another thing that I want to discuss that I did not say in the summary is that the author also includes that this child was taken from society. This child was a part of the utopia. And there always has to be a child suffering. They don't get into aging out, replacing the child, that sort of thing. It just covers this one specific instance in time, this like snapshot. So I think that it's a very interesting commentary on both society and on like people that are in oppressed groups, and even people not in oppressed groups that just have to go through discrimination and like acts against them that are negative. Like, it takes something away from you. It really does. And I think that The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas does a really good job of showing societal issues and what people just accept because it's what everyone accepts, and what people shouldn't accept just because the majority accepts it, you know? And I'd like to see more people that walk away in real life, is I guess what I wanted to say. But this is a really fantastic piece of fiction, and I would recommend it to anyone, really. It's so good. And if you don't want to read something that's a bit of a downer, then that's fine. But it's got something to say about the world, and I think people should read things that actually say something. I'm all for a light book that doesn't have any heavy stuff. But sometimes we need to get real, and be honest. And I think that this is a really good example of that. But so that's The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas. If you liked this, you should definitely subscribe. I plan to do more. There's other short stories that I read for that class. I'm going to start looking into my own short stories. And so I'd love to do this again. It was fun just getting to be a little more educational and analytical in my reading, and I hope that you guys liked it too. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.